This is Late Night Health, the radio show and video program that cares about the most important part of your life, your health. Hi, I'm Mark Alyn, and we're joined as we are each and every week by Dr. Greg Celaya. And I understand, Dr. Celaya, that we're going to do an egg amendment, keeping in tide with the political fervor that's sweeping the country. We're going to do an amendment. Is that correct?
Hey, Mark. Yeah. You got me up kind of early this morning. And yeah, we're going to do amendment. You know, on our last video, we talked about a disclaimer that I found on an egg carton. And by the way, I'm going to be reading a bunch here because there's just so much information.
Okay, sure.
California shell egg food safety compliant that I saw on a carton of eggs that I had in my refrigerator. And so let's go back to when this happened. In California, and you know, California's got some good things and some bad things, but they tend to do a lot of interesting things that the rest of the country either follows or fights. And this is, I guess, a combination of both. In 2008, voters voted on Proposition 2, which made it so the state can regulate the spaces that animals are raised in, right? Do you remember that?
Okay. Yeah, I sure do.
So the voters voted, it said, yes, we need to regulate this. We need to be concerned about how we're treating our animals. And the problem is that you had different states like Missouri, Alabama, Iowa, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Nebraska. They sued California under the Commerce Clause Act of the Constitution. And this went to the Supreme Court. And they were basically stating that California was affecting their eggs basically because they consume some of our eggs and they may have to adopt our rules and regulations. And the Supreme Court came out and said, you know, California is its own deal and can do what it wants when it comes to its eggs. So what happened was in 2015, this became a law here in California.
And would you say the law is a good one? It's a consumer protection?
Well, you know what happens is when eggs are being mass produced, there's a lot of different issues that can come into play. And one of the things that can be in play, obviously, is the space that an animal has. And I do think that's a huge issue. I mean, you know, like we've talked about before, we've seen old videos themselves of these birds just jammed in cages. I think 1 square foot. It might be even smaller. They go and they trim their wings and their beaks so they don't beat each other up or flap their wings and hurt themselves. And their lights are on 24/7. And, you know, I haven't basically verified all that stuff, but it's what we've been learned, right, over video for quite some time.
Absolutely. And it's cruel punishment to animals. There's just no doubt in my mind.
No, and you know what? And I have to agree with you. The big question is would commerce regulate this by what people want? So, you know, does the state have to come in and do it? But I don't know that that's the case because were they, you know, regulating it before? Was commerce actually regulating by what people want so the market drives it? I don't know. I don't have a problem with this law. There's certain things that we need to talk about. And, you know, I mentioned before vaccines, and we'll get into that also. But there's definitely stuff to talk about because I'm sure the rest of the country will follow in time like they usually do, or, you know, adamantly oppose it like they do as well. But California is very interesting.
I would assume, because I have not looked at the law, I have seen the statement on egg cartons. I do eat eggs a couple of times a week, usually when I'm not busy, and I just thought that it was a good beginning. As in the case of many laws, I think that it's a good step in the right direction. And we probably need 2 feet for every chicken, and it's even better. I think I mentioned the other day that I was watching a Gunsmoke from the 1950s, and of course they were portraying Kansas City, Dodge City, in the late 1800s, and their chickens running all over the place, right?
Yeah, and you know, I think laws have to be written when we start having big commerce have to deal with our food sources, and I do agree. I want to make sure that these chickens, not only for egg consumption, but for chicken consumption, that they're taken care of right? I mean, it's bad enough that, for example, if we're going to eat the chicken, but they need to have a good law or a good life, so to speak, right? And so I think it is important. Farmers, on the other hand, may disagree, but one of the problems that we have is that most people, at least that I know in California, aren't farmers. So, we didn't
I
grow up.
wouldn't know what to do with raising chickens. I don't know if you would or if you ever have. I would not.
No.
And offing them, there's just no way.
Well, I mean, these people have made it their business, and I respect that. Regulations do cramp some of these businesses. On the other hand, as a consumer, I want to make sure they're taken care of. So, but anyway, the law is in place. And since 2015, in California, we've had that law, and prices have gone up anywhere between 35 and 70% on our eggs in California, which, I'm fine with. I think it's worth it because we have a lot more invested in our health when it comes to this type of scenario. And I want to go over a few things with the law itself, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
So basically, this law applies if the company has over 3,000 laying hens or they pasteurize their eggs. And I didn't know egg shells could be pasteurized. I guess I did, but I really never gave it much thought.
Yeah, I never did either. That's interesting.
And what they do is they put the egg under heat enough to basically kill the bacteria on the outside, but not necessarily to cook the inside. And it's got to be cooked. There's got to be some cooking going on the inside. And so if you can imagine that if you're dealing with a lot of eggs, I guess I can understand it, right? I mean, if you're dealing with toxicity levels and salmonella, which is the big issue here, and that's where a lot of this rule is even written into, it can become a problem. I just don't want to consume eggs from big companies. I mean, that for me, that's the bottom line. I don't want to have to go through all this nonsense.
Going to the farmer's market, I see eggs, and they're still, when you think about it, relatively cheap. I think I was at a farmer's market 2 weeks ago, and I think the eggs, which were guaranteed to be organic and free range, I didn't ask what they were fed, but I had to assume that they were fed non-GMO chicken food. And I think one of us said that corn, for example, much of the corn in this country is GMO, genetically modified. And so if the chicken eats it, I'm going to eat it if I eat that chicken or the egg.
Yeah, and the problem is you can't assume anything anymore. So GMO, non-GMO, the problem with farmers markets is they tell you what you want to hear, and there's no regulation, and we'll get into the regulation. This regulation even gets into everything about registering the storage and handling requirements of eggs, which I think is great, especially if you're commercially producing eggs. It says that the egg must be kept at a temperature of 45 or lower, even during transportation, which is huge. Raw shell eggs may be stored and displayed without refrigeration at a certified farmer's market, which is great because they're not processing the egg. They're not getting rid of the cuticle by washing and disinfecting like the major egg retailers are. So they don't have to screw around with all the cooling that much. Let's see here. The eggs are not placed in direct sunlight during the storage and display. Retail egg containers are prominently labeled, refrigerate after purchase. I mean, if you look at egg containers, there's so much written on them. And the California law stipulates what you need to have written on this container. But, I bought another dozen eggs that didn't have some of this stuff on there. And it's interesting. I'm just a little curious. Any egg that are stored and displayed at temperatures of 90 or below that are unsold after 4 days from the date of pack, basically they're going to get rid of them. So we're talking about farmers market stuff.
Right.
So there's a lot to it. So they're talking about this, and they also talk about community food producers, which, farmers markets. And they talk about how they may not necessarily have to refrigerate them, but they say that they're basically restricted to selling 15 dozen eggs per month. And so I'm sure a farmer's market, farmer is going to sell way more than 15 dozen eggs. It wouldn't make sense for them to even
be in business.
Right,
No.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I don't know how they regulate that, but I guess it's like I mentioned to you before. We had a farmer here at a farmer's market that I went and talked to, and he says, I want you to come over to the farm. Here's the address. You come over anytime you want. Don't call me. Don't give me any advance notice. And I thought that was just fantastic, because he says, look, I want to make sure you're comfortable and you understand that we are living what we say we're going to do.
And did you go, and have you had a chance to go?
No, I haven't had a chance to go yet. But it's not that far, and one day I will. Uh-oh, it's an alarm for you.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so this law basically gets into a lot of egg carton labeling, egg grading, like we've done the sizes before. And I guess maybe in the past, the sizes have been a real problem, right? You go to the store, you buy a dozen eggs and they're extra large, and you open them up and you go, I can barely see them, right?
Right.
So
they look like quail eggs.
Yeah, exactly. So they've regulated that. They've also, one of the main things is to reduce the formation of salmonella. And it says producers with 3,000 or more laying eggs must abide by salmonella testing, which I'm okay with. In fact, this rule even talks about the chicken papers, the paper that's underneath the chicken, and how they test it, and what size of the paper needs to be tested. I mean, they get into a lot of stuff, which I think is great. If you're dealing with big vendors, right? That's what this is all about. But they must vaccinate as well, which, I'm not too necessarily keen on. I don't necessarily know enough about that vaccine to know. But if I have the option, I don't want my eggs or my chickens vaccinated. Do you?
No, I would say not, especially if they have the chemicals in it that are found in human vaccines.
Yeah, and but here again, if they pasteurize the eggs, they may not have to go down that route. They also limit the number of birds to a certain size. So, for example, whereas before this law, they were allowed 15 birds in a certain area, and now they have about 9. So they're saying that the minimum square inches per bird is 205 square inches. I don't know. That seems not very much, but
it's bigger than 1 square foot.
It's bigger than it was before.
Right. And I think that, as I said, that it seems that this law is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. And they also basically talk about record-keeping requirements. And it's important to make sure that they have that information on hand at any given point in time. So I do agree with you. I think it is a step in the right direction. And, like I said, I've seen I've seen cartons, and sorry, this one's kind of, let's see if you guys can see this.
Yeah, there it goes. Sure.
Yeah, it's backwards. Sorry.
Do it again.
No. I mean, it's
you talk.
Backwards. Anyway, so it basically says California Shag Egg Food Safety Compliant. And this is on a dozen of organic, free range, there's USDA organic, non-GMO. So the egg is in the right direction, and they're complying with laws. But now, on the other hand, I have another dozen of eggs here, which is from a company I really respect. Have you ever heard of Mary's Chickens?
Yes, sure.
All right. As far as what I know, and I've asked them if I can come tour, and I haven't heard back from them. And I asked them for some comment on this video that I was doing today about the California measure, but haven't heard back from them. And now, mind you, I didn't give them a lot of time to respond. So we'll see what happens, and maybe have to do an amendment to the amendment itself.
Got it.
I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so they have organic pasture-raised eggs, no antibiotics, gluten-free, no preservatives, no added hormones, enhanced omega-3, gently gathered daily by hand. And I wasn't able to find a huge amount of information on their egg production, but their chicken production is very interesting. They source their chickens from overseas because they grow at about half the rate of a normal chicken, which I think is great, especially when you
the Mary's chickens are coming from.
They say France, the breed itself. Now, I'm not sure, how many times, right? How many eggs do you need to get from France before you start doing your own breeding of that breed?
Right.
So, but originally they came from France because that chicken grew at half the rate of the altered chickens that we have here, which is a great thing. In addition to that, they have videos online where you can see these birds, they're let loose in a certain area, and they come and they move their hutch every 10 days, I think it is, to a new area. So, you're looking at these birds just roaming around doing what they want to do. And it sounds like a great idea to me. I don't know if all their stuff is that way, but I think they have a lot of integrity from what I understand. And they're doing what they say they do. And they supply a lot of the health food stores with eggs. And so we got a dozen here of wonderful eggs. Now, something that most people don't even consider is how you alter your consumption of eggs. We're all eating the same old chicken eggs over and over again, but Mary's has duck eggs.
I love duck eggs. They have a richer flavor to me.
They do, and they look relatively about the same. A little bit bigger. But where do you start? I watched a video the other day on somebody opening and cooking a emu egg. Have you seen that yet?
No, I have not.
You got to see it because the emu egg is absolutely beautiful. It looks like something man-made, so to speak. It's so beautiful.
It is. In ostrich eggs, emu eggs are huge, and I actually have an ostrich egg as a decoration in my living room, and people paint them and then sell them.
Well, I don't know if they're different. I know the emu egg is beautifully green and speckled. I mean, it almost looks like a texture. Like, I know this sounds kind of funny. You remember the old school days where you had a car and you opened up the back and you saw the trunk, the inside lining was all speckled beautifully and kind of raised looking. Do you remember that?
Sure.
It kind of looks like that. But it's just, they're absolutely beautiful. And these, you can see videos where people cook these things, and it's great. That's
one heck of a soft-boiled egg, I got to tell you. Doctor, we're out of time. I have a suggestion, because I know you have a lot more material, right?
Yep.
I think that because we've done a long session here, I think we should break this up into egg amendment number 2 and do that next week. What do you think?
It sounds good. I don't think I have too much more other than one thing. I did run upon a website called Cornucopia Institute. And what they do is they take a look at the egg producers and they rate them. And it's like, for example, here I'm looking at Mary's in Cornucopia, and they get great evaluations. So basically look at the ownership structure, the average flock size, are they organic certified, the space per bird, the death loss rates. I mean, they look at everything, at least I think, what I'm thinking about. What was that?
You've got a little bit of light coming on you.
Oh,
it
is what it is.
It's, yeah.
Anyway, but Cornucopia Institute has a lot of great information. Everything from ownership structure to average flock size to, are they organic, the space per bird, the laying hen lifespan, and they take a look at all these egg manufacturers. And I think it's a great thing to have access to. So you can look at cornucopia.org and take a look at their scorecard for egg manufacturers. And I think it's a great way to start. But yeah, maybe in the future we do another video. I think at this point, I think we're pretty good with what we have going on here. Just be aware of your eggs, where they're coming from. You want them from a small farmer as you possibly can get. If you do so, you're going to have healthier eggs, and they're not going to necessarily be mass-produced, which I would prefer not to have mass-produced food.
I would agree with that. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for getting up early for me. He got up like 3 hours before we normally do this show because I have another commitment. And I appreciate that. For Dr. Celaya, I'm Mark Alyn. Join Dr. Celaya at drcelaya.com. That's drcelaya.com. You'll see a lot of information about all kinds of health issues. videos, our videos. Dr. Celaya has his own videos. Just a ton of information. That's drcelaya.com. And you can, of course, visit us at latenighthealth.com. I'm Mark Alyn. Thanks for watching.